Hello and welcome to Black Hot Fires News at 7. This is Dimori. We start with a very sad development. We start with the development on the Monica Kimani murder case, where the Director of Public Prosecution has filed an appeal after last week's ruling. This comes after the High Court of Kenya acquitted former Citizen TV presenter Jackie Maribe in the murder case of the businesswoman. In the notice filed by Senior Assistant Director of Prosecution O.J. Omondi, the DPP office says it was dissatisfied with the ruling delivered by the High Court Judge Grace Nzioka on Friday last week. During the court ruling last week, Lady Justice Grace Nzioka found Joseph Irungu alias Joey guilty of the murder of the businesswoman Monica Kimani, who was brutally killed on the night of September 19, 2018 at her Lamuria Gardens apartment. She ruled that there was no evidence that she had been in contact with the deceased.
The Director of Public Prosecutions has filed a notice of appeal against the High Court judgment that acquitted former TV News anchor Jackie Maribe in the murder case of businesswoman Monica Kimani. In the notice filed by Senior Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions O.J. Omondi, the DPP's office says it was dissatisfied with the ruling delivered by High Court Judge Grace Nzioka on Friday last week. In her ruling, Lady Justice Grace Nzioka said the prosecution had adduced adequate evidence and proved beyond reasonable doubt that Joseph Irungu, alias Joey, was guilty of the murder. On the other hand, former TV News anchor Jackie Maribe, who was charged alongside Irungu, was acquitted of the murder charge, with the judge stating that the count of murder was not the proper charge that the prosecution should have preferred against her.
It is my considered view that the charge brought against the second accused person was not the proper charge. Article 157 gives the power to institute and prosecute a person suspected of committing the offense to the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. And the question posed at this stage is, was there an offense committed when the second accused person gave a statement to the investigating officers at Langata Police Station, which turned out to be not true? I say no more. The office of the Director of Public Prosecution know their mandate.
The Director of
Moving on, the Hustler Fund has disbursed loans totaling Kenya shillings 43.7 billion, that is $280 million US, ever since its rollout in November 2022, as President William Ruto has revealed. This marks a shillings 2.7 billion increase in the total loans disbursed compared to the figures initially released on Hustlers Fund 1-year anniversary in November 2023. He further emphasized on his plan to digitize revenue collection and service delivery, saying the government wanted to go fully digital by 2024. And in another sad update, one person has been killed and 2 injured in a hyena attack in Kenya. Anthony Pasha was dismembered and killed by hyenas while he was collecting firewood at a forest close to his home. According to family members, Pasha's brother ran to his rescue after hearing screams and was also attacked in the incident. The Kenya Wildlife Service said that it had tracked and killed the hyena following the attack, and its carcasses were being tested for rabies. The Kenya Wildlife Service, faced with increasing attacks in January, released guidelines on how to react when confronted by wild animals. Moving on, a man from Samburu County has today turned herself into a police station within the Coastal Devolved Unit after committing a gruesome murder. The 25-year-old man surrendered at the Kanani police station, where he confessed to chopping his 25-year-old wife to death and injuring his 1-year-old child. Hours after turning himself in, the woman's lifeless body was found lying in the family's living room, bearing deep cuts on the head and wounds on the upper body. 2 fingers from her body had also been chopped. This comes at a time when Kenya has been experiencing many cases of femicide, with women being killed in mysterious circumstances. The child who sustained injuries has been hospitalized at the Coast General Hospital. The motive of the murder is yet to be established. Moving away from sad news, 6 members of the United States Congress have opposed a move by their government to support a Kenya-led multinational security mission to Haiti. In a letter to the Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the members questioned why the US government was supporting the Kenyan security forces who have a history of violating human rights. They referenced the 2023 mass action organized by Azimio, where more than 20 people died during the demonstrations. The 6 congressmen comprise Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, then Clark of New York, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan's 12th Congressional District, Barbara Lee of California 12th Congressional District, Jan Skalowski of Illinois, and Jens McGovern of Massachusetts 2nd Congressional District. They further claim the process lacked clear objectives and strategy, arguing that foreign armed intervention would destabilize the country's economy. The High Court of Kenya stopped the peacekeeping mission, arguing that the constitution only allows members of the military to be deployed outside Kenya. President Ruto, however, defiantly confirmed that the country would go ahead with the planned deployment after agreement with Haiti. And in other news, anti-Western protests rock Kinshasa with residents demonstrating in front of the United States Embassy's office. Demonstrators accused Western governments of failing to use their influence to curb violence in the east of the country and especially preventing Rwanda's involvement in the conflict. On Monday, they burnt the US and Belgian flags while others burnt tires in front of the UN MONUSCO headquarters. Police responded by firing tear gas canisters while many shops and businesses remained closed. The protests come following advances by the M23 rebel group in recent weeks. Hundreds of thousands of people have fled their homes in the Masisi region to seek refuge in the city of Goma following the deadly attacks by the group. Rwanda has been accused of funding the group by the DRC, the United Nations, and numerous other governments. Kigali, however, continues to deny the accusations.
A violent confrontation between police and protesters in the Congolese capital, Kinshasa. Protest organizers say the government's voter enrollment process is a sham. They're demanding an international audit of the entire electoral commission, governing participation between police and protesters in the Congolese capital, Kinshasa. Protest organizers say the government's voter enrollment process is a sham. They're demanding an international audit of the entire electoral commission. Governing party supporters say they'll resist what they consider attempts to discredit the government.
If the opposition call for protest, we will come as well. We are in power. We can call all the forces, including the army and the police, to stop this opposition from challenging the president.
Since he won disputed elections in 2019, critics say President Felix Tshisekedi has made a series of moves aimed at consolidating his power. That includes appointing partisan judges, handpicking loyalists to run the Electoral Commission, and declaring a so-called state of siege in the eastern North Kivu and Ituri provinces, areas known to be opposition strongholds.
It is very sad to see police deployed by President Felix Tshisekedi blocking protesters in a democratic state. We know that it is his time, but we will continue to fight because we have the right to save this country. Felix has failed at all levels, and he must be conscious of this.
Police in the capital block another presidential candidate from joining the demonstrations. Thousands of opposition supporters have promised to stay on the streets.
We are determined to continue the protest whatever happens. If they block us, we will always find another way to protest against the election process, insecurity, and also living conditions of our people.
Opposition leaders have called for another rally outside the Electoral Commission headquarters next Thursday. But with just 7 months to go until the general election, The opposition is worried time may be running out to ensure a fair election. Barbara Angopa, Al Jazeera. A violent confrontation between
Let us now head to South Africa, where opposition leader Julius Malema has been banned from attending the State of the Nation speech. A South African court on Tuesday upheld a ban on opposition party leaders from attending President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech this week to mark the opening of the new parliamentary session after they were sanctioned for disrupting the event a year ago. The leader, deputy leader, and 4 other representatives of the EFF will not be allowed to attend the session. The ruling party, the ANC, has been in power since the end of apartheid in 1994, but this year's vote could mark the end of this rule, with ANC losing popularity. Now, heading to Senegal, on a news piece that we reported yesterday, and that we said we will be following, election protests turned deadly in Senegal, with at least 2 people having been confirmed dead. Security forces in Senegal have clashed with hundreds of protestants who are opposed to the delay of the presidential elections that are supposed to take place on February 25th. Police in Dakar fired tear gas canisters on crowd and prevented people from gathering and meeting to protest. Less than 3 weeks to the election, the parliament voted to push it back to December 15th, upholding President Sall's earlier postponement and sealing an extension to his mandate. In videos seen by Black Hot Fire, cries of Macky Sall is a dictator were heard all over Dakar, with protestants waving Senegalese flags.
Chaos and unrest in Senegal once again. Protesters blocked the highway into Dakar with burned tires and trucks. The country's interior minister dissolved the opposition P.H.F party, accusing it of being behind last month's wave of violence. Demonstrations broke out in June after a court sentenced Sonko to 2-year arrest in Senegal once again. Protesters blocked the highway into Dakar with burned tires and trucks. The country's interior minister dissolved the opposition P.H.F party, accusing it of being behind last month's wave of violence. Demonstrations broke out in June after a court sentenced Sonko to 2 years in prison for morally corrupting a young woman. It's the first time a political party had been banned in the West African nation since it gained its independence from France in 1960.
It is clearly evident that we are moving in an authoritarian direction, and the defense finds itself unable to meet its client, to talk to its client, to prepare him for the hearing with the examining magistrate, and that is a scandal.
The new charges against Sanko's come after he urged supporters to take to the streets to protest against his jail sentence. He is charged with undermining state security, criminal association with a terrorist body, disseminating false news, and theft.
If Ousmane Sonko is arrested, the whole of Senegal will come to a standstill. The state must release Sonko if it wants peace to return. Sonko is our leader. We carry him in our hearts, and we'll do whatever he asks us to do. As long as he's in prison, we'll keep on fighting. Even if it takes all eternity, we'll never give up.
In a statement on Facebook, the 49-year-old Sonko claims he has been unjustly placed in custody.
The aim of this political order was to prevent President Ousmane Sonko from taking part in the 2024 elections. And unfortunately, today, we have a judiciary that is almost subservient to the executive. Not even to the executive, but to a regime that whenever it wants, looks for trouble with its political opponents and sends them to prison. And that's unfortunate for our Senegalese democracy.
Senegal's President Macky Sall has had a turbulent second term and has faced mounting criticism after rumors emerged that he would run for president again next year. Last month, he dismissed speculation that he would stand for a third term, but this has done little to quell unrest in the country. Critics say the charges against Sonko are the latest move by Sall's party to deter the opposition leader from running in February's presidential election. Sena Asylum.
That is what has been happening in Senegal with the demonstrations after the election was postponed. And in a developing story that we are going to report more tomorrow, Malawi has lifted visa restrictions for 79 African countries. I'll give you more details on this tomorrow because it is a developing story. Let us now head to Cameroon, where a deadly explosion hit Cameroon's Youth Day celebration. A devastating explosion yesterday hit Cameroon during the National Youth Day commemoration as an improvised explosion device ripped through a food sales outlet in the town of Nkambe, leaving a trail of destruction and injuring numerous individuals, including children. The attack, which is believed to be orchestrated by the separatists fighters, underscored the ongoing unrest in the country's Anglophonic region and cast a shadow in the annual celebrations. Videos seen by the Black Hot Fire Network depicted chaos with children clad in blue school uniform fleeing the scenes alongside injured adults receiving assistance from bystanders.
A devastating explosion marked Cameroon's National Youth Day commemoration as an explosive device ripped through a food sales outlet in the town of Kambe, leaving a trail of destruction and injuring numerous individuals.
Several persons were reported injured, including children who are receiving medical treatment in the various health facilities there in Kambe. And separatist fighters are believed to be behind this attack that occurred as people in Cameroon were commemorating the 11th of February, called the National Youth Day. Before events leading up to this commemoration, separatist fighters who have been clamoring for an independent nation since 2016 in the two Anglophone regions have banned any activity, even instituting a one-week lockdown aimed at disrupting any activity that shows that there is normalcy in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon. What happened in Kambe is just one of those attacks that have always occurred whenever a government major event is taking place in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon.
Separatist fighters who have been advocating for independence since 2016 have escalated their campaign in recent years, resulting in tactics aimed at destabilizing government activities and asserting their control over the territory.
That is what has been happening in Cameroon, and a quick recovery to all those who are injured. And talking about Cameroon, there has been an ongoing war in Cameroon with the Anglophonic and the English-speaking part of Cameroon and the French-speaking part of Cameroon. And today on our special feature, we'll be looking at the war that is happening right now in Cameroon.
These women and children are being led to their deaths. The soldiers accuse them of belonging to the jihadist group Boko Haram. In the final scene of this video, too graphic to show here, they're blindfolded. These women and children are being led to their deaths. The soldiers accuse them of belonging to the jihadist group Boko Haram. In the final scene of this video, too graphic to show here, they're blindfolded, forced to the ground, and shot at close range 22 times. One of the women still has the baby strapped to her back. The video began to circulate on July 10, 2018. Some claimed that this atrocity took place in Mali. But others said it was filmed in the far north of Cameroon, where government soldiers have been fighting Boko Haram since 2014. The government of Cameroon initially dismissed the video as fake news. A month later, they announced that 7 members of the military were under investigation. But there has still been no official admission that these killings were carried out on Cameroonian soil by government soldiers, and there is still no guarantee that anyone will be held to account. So how can we tell what really happened here? Over the next few minutes, we're going to follow these women and children on the short walk to the end of their lives, and to glean from this video the clues that tell us where this happened, when it happened, and who is responsible for this atrocity. This looks like the kind of dusty, anonymous track that could be anywhere in the Sahel. But the first 40 seconds of the film capture a mountain range with a distinctive profile. We spent hours trying to match this range to the topography of northern Cameroon. And then, in late July, we received a tip-off from a Cameroonian source. Have you looked at the area near Zelibet? Close to the town of Zelibet, we found a match for the ridgeline. It places the scene on a dirt road just outside a village called Kraamafa. A few hundred meters away is the border with Nigeria. The video also reveals other details that can be matched precisely to what we see on the satellite imagery. This track, these buildings, and these trees. Putting all this evidence together, we can say with certainty that the killings took place here. Less than a kilometer away in Zelibet, we found this compound and identified it as a combat outpost used by the Cameroonian military in their fight against Boko Haram. We'll come back to this base later. Exactly when the killings took place is, at first sight, harder to say, but again, the video contains clues. This building is visible on satellite imagery, but only until February 2016. The murders must have happened before that date. Satellite images also capture this structure. The walls surrounding it are present in imagery dated March 2015, but had not yet been built in November 2014, giving us an earliest possible date for the atrocity. The video also reveals this footpath, a path that only appears in the hot, dry season between January and April. There are other, less obvious clues in the video. As they lead these women away, the soldiers, like moving sundials, cast shadows on the track. A simple mathematical formula tells us the angle of the sun in comparison to the horizon. We can also see what direction the light is coming from. When we add this data to our location, we can get a precise time frame for this event. The killings happened between March 20th and April 5th, 2015. We now know where this happened, and we know when it happened. But who are the men who murdered these women and children? In July, Issa Chiroma Bakari, Cameroon's Minister of Communication, insisted that the killers are not Cameroonian soldiers and presented what he claimed was irrefutable evidence from the video itself. The weapons, he said, are not those used by the Cameroonian army in this area of operation. But our analysis shows that one of these guns is a Serbian-made Zastava M21. It's rare in sub-Saharan Africa, but it is used by some divisions of the Cameroonian military. Bakari also claimed that a close examination of the video shows the soldiers wearing colorful forest-style camouflage. In the far north, he said, Cameroonian soldiers wear pale, desert-style fatigues. A closer look at the evidence reveals this. Cameroonian soldiers, seen here in a 2015 report by Channel 4 News, filmed in Zelibet, wearing darker, forest-style fatigues, similar to those seen in the video. On Facebook, we also found these pictures of other Cameroonian soldiers wearing the same type of camouflage. The images are tagged to Zelafet. Bakari also questioned why the soldiers are not wearing the standard combat gear of troops stationed in that area: heavy helmets, bulletproof vests, and rangers' boots. The answer is that the soldiers were not out on patrol. They were just a few hundred meters away from the combat outpost we saw earlier. We know that this is a military base because we matched the features visible in satellite imagery to the details in the Channel 4 news report that was shot here in 2015. In August this year, an Amnesty International investigator spoke with residents of Zelafet who had been displaced by the fighting to a nearby town. Among them was a man who said that he saw these women and children being brought into the base by Cameroonian soldiers. A short while after they were led away, he said he heard gunfire. In August, there was a sudden change in the government's position. After weeks of denying that these killings took place in Cameroon, Bakari announced that 7 members of the Cameroonian military had been arrested and were under investigation. Our analysis has identified 3 men who actually pulled the trigger. One of them is this man, introduced at the start of the film as Chocho. We found a Facebook profile that links the nickname Chocho to a soldier called Syriac Pitiala. A Syriac Pitiala is among the detainees named by the government. The BBC has also spoken with a former Cameroonian soldier who confirmed that this is Chocho Syriac Pitiala. At the end of the film, we see him again, blindfolding the little girl he's about to kill. A few seconds later, he draws his weapon and opens fire. Our analysis identified 2 other guns that were used in the killing. One of them was in the hands of this man. We see him here blindfolding the woman with the baby, seconds before the shooting starts. Our military source identified him as Barnabas Gonoso. Although we were not able to confirm this identification, a very similar name, Barnabas Donosu, appeared 11 days later on the government's list of soldiers who are now under investigation. The third weapon used in the killing is the Zastava M21 we saw earlier. It is in the hands of a man introduced in the video as Second Class Cobra. So who is Cobra? As the women and children are killed, Cobra is the last man still firing into the bodies. One of his colleagues calls out, "Tsanga, leave it, they're dead." When he still does not stop shooting, they call out again, "That's enough, Tsanga, that's enough." The name Tsanga also appears on the list of men under investigation, suggesting that Cobra is a nickname for Lance Corporal Tsanga. Another man named among those arrested is Etienne Favasu. He is the platoon commander who was interviewed by Channel 4 News in 2015. As far as we can tell, he does not appear in the video. We put these findings to the government of Cameroon, who responded.
7 soldiers were arrested, disarmed. They are under investigation right now. I can confirm that all 7 of them are in prison.
The government statement on the arrests makes clear that all these men enjoy the presumption of innocence until the investigation has been concluded, and that all of them will be given a fair trial. No due process was extended to the 2 women killed outside Zelafet, and no presumption of innocence was afforded to the children who died with them.
So we end our news with a very sad update from Cameroon. That is what has been happening in Cameroon. I know it is a sad video and it's a very sad update, but we have to report on what is really happening in Africa. Whether sad, whether happy, we have to report it as it is. And that was one very sad update on Cameroon and the war that has been happening there and all the brutality that has been orchestrated by the military forces. And so that is all we had today on the Black Hot Fire News, on a night when anti-Western protests rocked Kinshasa and the DPP appealed Monica Kimani's death in Kenya, and a man was killed and 2 injured by a hyena attack in Kenya, in a night where violence and chaos rock Cameroon in post-election violence, in a night where Julius Malema was banned from attending national event in South Africa, and an explosion in Cameroon left many injured. And also on a story that we are following where Malawi lifted visa restriction for 79 countries. So you're now up to date at 30 minutes. You're now up to date at 30 minutes past 7 p.m. East African time. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's been a pleasure.